Recently, I recorded a video showing you a powerful opening trap that allows you to crush your opponents in just about 8 moves. And it got a lot of views, I received a lot of positive feedback from you guys, but also many of you have sent me your questions about this, and therefore I decided to record this continuation showing you the revised and improved version of the same opening trap, so that it's not just a single trick, but a really powerful opening weapon. And if you're ready, let's have a look. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the so-called Tennyson Gambit, and it was known as the trap arising from the Scandinavian defense after the first moves pawn e4, pawn d5, and white enters the gambit by playing knight to f3, gambiting this pawn e4. But in that case, you depend on your opponent playing the Scandinavian defense. But there is a way to make this a lot more universal, where, let's take it back, you enter the very same position starting from the ready opening. You play knight to f3 first. And then, since usually your opponent is going to play either pawn d5 or pawn e5 in an opening, now we took away one of these two squares, and therefore your opponent is left with only the move d5, and that's the most played move in this position. And then you play e4, transposing and tricking your opponent into the same Tennyson Gambit. And just in case you don't know, the main line goes pawn takes e4, black accepts the gambit, knight goes to g5, and that starts a more or less forcing line leading to you crushing your opponent in just about 8 moves or even less. So now we attack the pawn, black normally defends it with their knight from f6, and then you play pawn to d3, attacking it once again. And so black normally is happy to trade it off because they're pawn up anyway. Now bishop takes d3, and here's the moment of truth. Black is a pawn up, but they're annoyed a little bit by your knight standing there and somewhat, attacking their position. Also, your bishop is putting pressure somewhat here, and lots of your opponents are going to play pawn h6, getting right into the trap that comes off knight takes f7. And after king takes, there's bishop to g6, deadly discovered attack. So we check the king and we win the queen on the next move. This way, you expose your opponent's king, you win the queen, and you get a totally winning position. While it's really nice and effective, I'm going to share with you some additional ideas of how you can use the same opening variation against the Sicilian defense, against the Carcan defense, the Scandinavian defense, of course, and also some pitfalls that you got to be aware of. There is one variation that more advanced level opponents may play against you, so you got to know what to do. Here, after black accepts the gambit pawn and you play knight g5 hitting this pawn, instead of defending it with knight to f6, some of your opponents may choose to play queen d5, which hits 2 birds with 1 stone. Those guys who came up with those proverbs were really nasty, but anyway. Here, black defends the pawn on e4 and attacks your knight on g5, and it looks like you're in trouble. But if you do know the solution, it is truly beautiful. It is the move pawn to d3. You're attacking this pawn and also defending your knight on g5. Okay, black is happy to trade it off. I capture with the bishop, and at this point it may seem like you blundered this pawn on g2 and black can simply win it by playing queen takes g2. But that is actually a trap, because although it looks highly beneficial for black, in reality after bishop to e4, you x-ray this rook, thus you defend it, you attack the queen, and there aren't many squares for the queen to go to. If you look around, there is only one, which is queen to g4. And after that, it leads to a forcing win for you. You trade queens, and now bishop takes b7 simply wins the rook on the next move, black is defenseless, you win. If your opponent isn't seduced by the bait and doesn't take it, then they often play pawn h6 to kick off your knight, and then there is another beautiful line. You do play knight c3, counter-attacking their queen. They attack your knight, you counter-attack their queen. But at this point, black will usually think, okay, I can retreat over here, deliver in check, and then I'll grab the knight. Thus, you move the knight back to e4, and by the way, one good thing that's happening here is that you keep developing your pieces while black is completely undeveloped, so that already gives you great potential. But of course, black has something in mind. They may think, okay, I'm gonna play pawn f5, and since the knight is pinned down to the king, I'm simply gonna take it on the next move, and I'm gonna be winning. There are different ways to go about this position. One really nasty move that I love here is the move bishop to e2. You pretend like you decided to back down and you were worried about this attack and this capture, but in reality after pawn takes e4 there is a simple bishop h5, and it's actually a checkmate in this variation, because notice that your queen cuts off black's king, and therefore this is truly a checkmate. Here's some really cool stuff. You can trick your opponent into the same Tennyson Gambit pattern through the Carcan defense. When you start off with the move pawn e4 and black responds with pawn to c6, you play knight f3 pretending like you're playing the 2 knights variation. They play pawn d5 attacking this pawn. You play d3 pretending like you just wanted to defend it, but after pawn takes, all of a sudden you do play knight to g5. Now your opponent wants to save their extra pawn, so they take it over here, and now bishop takes d3. And against the Caro-Kann defense, it works even better compared to the other openings, because now, just look at this, you're actually threatening to simply capture this pawn, your knight and bishop teamed up against it, so you are threatening to capture the pawn, and then possibly capture this bishop over there. And the two normal ways for black to defend this pawn are either just to push it forward, or to play knight f6 and defend it with their knight. But both of them are losing to the same tactics that we already know. Regardless of whether they play h6 or knight f6, which are the two most popular moves here, you unleash the same tactical thing. Knight takes f7, hitting the queen and the rook. Therefore, black is forced to capture, but then bishop to g6 opens up this discovered attack, and you win the queen and the game. Here's another cool bonus. You can use the same tactical pattern against one of the most common chess openings, the Sicilian defense. When you play pawn e4 and your opponent responds with pawn to c5, entering the Sicilian defense, now you can go for the move pawn to c3, the Alpine variation. And here one of the major moves for black is pawn to d5, which will lead us where we want to go. Of course, your opponent may play something else. For example, one of the most common moves on amateur level is knight to c6, and I've got another video where I'm showing you some really powerful variation against it. I recommend that you check it out later, but for now, let's focus on another main move, pawn d5. And of course, everybody takes here, but instead we're going to go into the Tennyson Gambit direction, playing knight f3. You can easily see that the pattern is basically the same. We're offering this pawn on e4 for free, black captures it, knight goes to g5. It is basically all the same stuff. Knight goes to f6 to defend the pawn. Now on e4 we play pawn d3. We know this really well. Pawn takes, bishop takes d3. And at this point, you know, your opponent may be annoyed by some pressure that you put over here, and very often they will play pawn h6. Of course, some of your opponents may not play that move and may play something else, and they'll be a pawn up, but anyway, you have some compensation. And again, I recommend that you check out my earlier video where I recommend you some good lines of how to handle those situations. But for now, let's check out the most common move, pawn h6. And you know what to do. Knight takes f7, destroys black, and puts them in big trouble after king takes g6. You've got a beautiful choice of whether you want to win with bishop g6 or bishop c4. For example, bishop to g6 once again opens up this discovered attack, and you win. As some of you correctly pointed out in comments, these tactics may not work against somebody rated above 2000. But let's face it, most players aren't there. Most of your opponents will never reach that level, unfortunately. And why is that so? Well, let me show you one example. Right now, the white's position is totally winning, but if we continue the line, king takes g6, and we grab the queen over there on d8, and here, the white's position, once again, totally winning. We expose the king, we want the queen, but now after knight to c6, in this position, as well as in all the other versions of the Tennyson Gambit, lots of players play the losing mistake queen to c7, and that loses the game basically in one move, because after queen c7, black plays pawn e5, and now this queen is caged, it is locked, it can't get out, and on the next move, black is gonna get it with something like this, knight e8 or knight d5, capturing the queen, and black is winning. And those kind of annoying blunders is one of the reasons why most people never can reach the 2000 rating level. And actually, you know, through the years, I've coached many students, and once I've decided to sit down, analyze lots of games, and decide what are those common roadblocks that prevent people from reaching 2000 rating and sometimes even 1800 rating level, despite they play chess for years. And I've realized that there are just several common roadblocks, and people are much closer to this goal than they think. And so I've decided to record a course called 3 Steps to 2000 ELO, showing you the roadmap to that rating. And if that's one of your chess goals, then you may click the link below the video, get the course, and hopefully you'll be there much sooner than you think. Also, let me know what you think about this opening variation. All the games and resources that I've mentioned will be somewhere on the screen or in the description below the video. Talk to you soon. Take care.